So I'm going to welcome my panel to the stage now. So we're going to have two people joining me. So we're starting with Pascal Canfin. You may know Pascal if you're French. You might not if you're not. Pascal is a French MEP. He's part of the Renew Europe group. In the European Parliament, Pascal served as chair of the Committee on the Environment, Health and Food Safety from 2019 to 2024. And Pascal was instrumental in advancing environmental policies like the European Parliament's declaration of a climate emergency. Before his time in politics, Pascal was the Director General of WWF France. Second, we have Célia Agostini. Célia is the director of Cleantech for France, an organization dedicated to accelerating green technologies all over France. Célia's role involves facilitating dialogue between innovators, investors, policymakers to support the growth of clean tech startups and promote adoption of sustainable solutions. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you so much for joining me. So, where do we start? That was a very powerful speech from Clover. And I want to start by maybe getting a bit of some insight from you, Pascal, because you've been in Parliament for a very long time. You have a lot of experience. And you've spoken out about unethical lobbying, from big industry during your time in Parliament. Can you give, maybe an example of lobbying that directly tried to undermine environmental progress?
Yes. Which example do you want me to share? Hello to everybody. I will start with one. Can I quote companies?
Yes.
Yeah? OK. So I will start with one file, which was the most lobbied file of the whole Green Deal. It's on packaging. So it's not directly the oil industry, it's not Facebook and so on, it's the packaging industry. And another element of this lobbying for the packaging file was the fast food industry. Because when you think about one business model relying on things you throw away, basically fast food, it comes probably first. So we have, when we tried to introduce regulation, as we have in France, so nothing just out of the blue, just it works somewhere, it works here. We said, well, let's extend that to the EU, that when you come to a fast food, you have to recycle, you have to reuse, and then you just ask McDonald's to do things that all the people having a restaurant or a cafe have been doing for centuries, just washing their stuff and reusing their stuff. We had an immense lobbying campaign against us, and led by McDonald's Europe. And what was very interesting is that to give you a flavor of that. First, it's not very popular to fight for waste, to fight for or against any rules to reduce emissions, reduce waste, reduce plastic usage, and so on. So that's why the campaign was absolutely not wide audience. It was very targeted to us. And you had posters in the metro in Brussels, where the Parliament, European Parliament is located, but only on the metro station, 2 or 3, around the European institutions. So interesting. I mean, they didn't really want to go to you and saying, it's good to use and to waste plastic. Very good, we like that. No, they come to us, very targeted. Second element, they commissioned a study. And then they went and see to all the parliament, all the MEPs, the member of the European Parliament and the Commission and so on, saying, well, we have a study demonstrating that wasting plastic is better than reusing. So we looked at it quite carefully. And actually, the author of the study was a consulting firm. And all the sources they used, all the data, were not in the study itself. It was on the footnote. So we looked at the footnote and we said, okay, what is the source? What is the database? Where is the science behind that? And then when you look at the footnote, it refers to a study by the author of the study.
Wow.
So that is circular. I mean, that's really circular science. That you refer to yourself and you say how good I am and how right I am, but you're not challenged. You just put yourself in a cycle. So this study was scrapped by more than 100 real scientists, saying, well, there is absolutely no rational, no reality behind the facts and behind the study. But still, McDonald's campaigned weeks and months based on these figures and this data.
Wow.
So it gives you a very concrete example of what a company can do behind the scene. I'm not saying completely behind the scene, because you had posters in the metro in Brussels, but very targeted and using tools that are really unfair.
But it didn't work in the end.
So
their influence didn't go that far?
They partially won, they partially lost. But I must admit that they partially won. And then it's important to bring a bit more complexity in that scene, is that we had the lobbying from fast food companies led by McDonald's, but it was related as well to the positioning of some countries where behind the fast food industries you have the packaging industries. I mean, each time you have a cup, we don't have a cup here, each time you have a cup to get your coffee to take away, it's a cup where you think it's paper cup, but it's plastified paper cup. And because it is plastified and paper, you cannot recycle it. You can recycle it. Theoretically, you can. But to disconnect paper from plastic costs a lot of money and takes a lot of energy. So at the end of the day, it's even not very meaningful from a pure climate and energy standpoint. But you can do it, theoretically. So that's why this company, and the global leader of this packaging, is a company you probably have never heard of. It's from Finland. And they team up with McDonald's. So everybody knows McDonald's, but nobody knows the packaging plastified paper global leader from Finland. And they team up. And of course, once you have the global leader in one country like Finland, I can tell you that Finland was on the side of its company, and which was on the side of McDonald's. So you start having an ecosystem where it's not only one company, it's an ecosystem where you see the pressure coming from various angles. And that's where the lobbying starts being very efficient. Of course, what I could give you, and I guess Célia will do it as well, I could give you examples of the very same kind of ecosystem, but for positive lobbying. And it's very important to stress the fact that lobbying could be positive lobbying, to get more ambition, to have more stringent rules and so on, as it could be for bad reasons. So it's not lobbying in itself that is questionable, as long as, and I have always put 3 conditions to have lobbying as, I would say, normal in a democratic way. First, it has to be transparent. Otherwise, you are undemocratic. Second, you have to be based on science, so you have to have real facts to share, which was definitely not the case of McDonald's here in that study. And third, if you challenge a rule, if you are against a rule for climate or for circular economy or for nature, for biodiversity, for whatever, you have to propose an alternative. You have to say, okay, what you are proposing, guys, is just bullshit for X, Y, Z reason. Maybe they're right. I mean, they know their business. They are really producing packagings or fast food for real. So they know how to operate. But then they have to propose an alternative with the same impact. And then I would say, okay, fair. Commission, maybe European Commission or myself, I was wrong, or the French government or whatever was wrong to think that it could be done this way. It's better to be done that way. But of course, it's not at all what the Finnish company in that case or McDonald's did.
And I imagine it can be quite hard to spot sometimes as well. And we can go back into that. Célia, I just want to come to you. So, we mentioned here that lobbying is often seen as a dirty word. So, in your experience, can lobbying serve the public good?
So, hello, thank you, Maeve, and thank you all for being here. Maybe I just have to precise one thing, is that prior to joining Cleantech for France, so today I advocate for green reindustrialization and decarbonization. I represent scale-ups, innovators like Mirova, like Vercor, like Neolith. And prior to doing that, I was political and parliament advisor of the French Minister of Industry and Energy, Agnès Pannier-Runacher. And so sometimes I call myself like a double agent because I had the two perspectives, and I met Pascal during that time and that period, and we worked together on the Green Deal. And for positive impact, first I think I have 2 points. First, you have to understand that lobbying, I think, at the end, is making your cause real, is turning it into a real reality, a concrete reality. And the second point is that policymaking is a human process. So first, about the making real your reality, is that whether you're a coalition of members like me, Cleantech for France, or you're a large company, you're an NGO, or a citizen, the challenge is the same. It's to connect your cause to a policy decision that can have a real and positive impact.
Yeah.
But that's not all, and you also have to build a broad support of people. And I think lobbying in that way is a kind of democratic participation. But we must remain vigilant because not all voices have the same access to decision makers. And that's why it's very important when you come to the political moment and the human process of the policy. I think there is a key moment is during the legislative process. Because at the end, it's not only about facts, reports. It's also about intuition. It's about constraints you will have to take into account when you will have to take a decision as a policymaker. And during my experience, I think I have a concrete example because I managed three major bills on energy and during the last crisis of energy. And I was, as a political and parliament advisor, I was not the expert on technical energy, and that's completely fine because it wasn't my role. My role was to be open-minded, it was to be curious, and bringing in a human touch during this process. And that's how we realized that even if everyone agreed on producing more green energy, we have to involve local decision policymakers, like mayors. And so we spent hours and hours to talk with them because we were facing during that time, and even now, strong local opposition against projects of green energies. And so we had to gather everybody around the table. And at the end, we managed to do it, and it paid off because we managed to get the bill on accelerating renewable energies passed almost unanimously at the Senate. So it was completely a big one.
Yeah.
So this is an example of a positive impact in lobbying.
Yeah.
But I have obviously also another one, but a bad one at that time. It was during a law when the law aimed to push companies to give more responsibility to women in their organization. And so I remember that we had a lot of pressure from companies because they use sometimes questionable arguments. But at the end, I think the problem was they were against the principle of the law. It was just give more responsibilities to women. But at the end, we fight for it, and we managed to have a bill passed. But it was a real fight and another bad example.
It's really hopeful to hear these two stories because it does show that lobbying doesn't have to be a dirty word, and especially the first example, bringing in the mayors, bringing in the community, bringing in the regional influence. And obviously, as Clover said, activism, collective grassroots activism is another form of lobbying in some way. We're all lobbying for change. I mean, Pascal, for example, in Celia's example, clean tech startups don't have the resources that oil companies do. So what do you think it's like trying to lobby as a smaller actor? Oh.
Same. That's a very important element of what I've been trying to do, not only myself, but with some colleagues in the parliament, is to make sure that we have a fair access to decision makers. If you are a small or medium-sized company, if you are startups, if you are just a clean tech with a real disruptive innovation coming on the market, and you have what we call a legacy company or an incumbent company, so a company with dozens of thousands of people, having the financial capacity to hire people in Brussels, if I take my case, or in Paris, of course, for the French National Assembly or the government, but in my case, in Brussels. And just to give you an example, Google has more than 200 people working alone on lobbying in Brussels.
What are they lobbying?
Sorry?
What are they lobbying?
What are they lobbying? They are lobbying against the AI Act. They are lobbying against the Digital Services Act. They are lobbying against any rules we want to do as Europeans, just to implement a real basic principle, which is the rules in place in real life should be in place in the digital world.
Yeah.
And it happens that, unfortunately, and that's not the point for this discussion, all the tech giants are not European. They are either US or Chinese. Maybe a few here and there are not US and Chinese, but all of them are there. So that's why there were so many lobbying activities from Google, for instance, against or Meta or Amazon or TikTok or Temu or Shine, against one key element, which is the responsibility of the platform. Just for you to know, when you buy something on Amazon Marketplace or on Temu, they are not responsible of what they sell to you. If it means that as a consumer, if something wrong happens, you just have nothing to go to and say, well, guys, this product is dangerous for me. And it happens, sorry, I'm a bit out of the clean tech thing, but it's very important for you to know also as parents.
Yeah.
We made a test on Temu, so the Chinese platform everybody knows, on toys. Toys for kids. It happens that more than 95% of toys sold on Temu do not comply with the safety regulation for kids. I mean, if it would have been 5 or 10%, you could say, okay, it happens. But 95% means that it is systemic. We do not have the legal tool to say to Temu, just we close. I mean, if we go to a restaurant down the street, if there is a control to that restaurant saying, well, the management of the heating or the management or the cooling system is bad, does not comply with the safety regulation, then you close the restaurant.
Wow.
We have the power to do so, and rightly so. Why? Because it's a platform from China or from the US. We shouldn't have the exact same reaction.
Yeah.
Once we know that 95% of the toys are illegal.
Yeah.
And not illegal because blah, blah, illegal because they have chemical products dangerous for kids. It's not a small thing.
Yeah.
So I would like to apply the same rule to Temu or to Amazon than to the restaurant down the corner. That's exactly the kind of thing against they lobby, but as hell. As hell.
So you mentioned, so you're talking there about fairness across the board, so that everyone, has the same rules, no one is exempt. Fairness, transparency. I just wanted to talk a bit about, Clover spoke a bit about ethics committees, about anti-corruption laws. What do you both think is the answer to make lobbying, making transparent lobbying mandatory?
And I completely agree with Pascal. I think that, for example, in France today, for transparency, lobbyists must declare who they meet. And we have other example we have a higher authority which called HATVP. And for the HATVP, public officials are monitored for 3 years when they move to the private sector, so including me today. But at the end, I think that I don't criticize that, but I do wonder, does focusing only on sanctions really rebuild trust? And I believe today what matters most is restoring public confidence in how decisions are made. So that's why personally I think it's far more useful when you have a member of parliament like Pascal says that, okay, on that amendment I worked with this company or this NGO. It's transparency. And I think it's far more useful than when we ask ministers to declare how many bank accounts they have when they take their responsibilities. So for me, it's really how we build this trust again in the process of a decision making. And that's the good transparency for me.
Yeah.
It's not something when I arrived to my old functions, I had to declare how many bank accounts, the bank accounts of my boyfriend, etc. And I think it's not useful. It's not what matters. It will not prevent public decision maker to do something right or wrong.
Absolutely.
And at the end, it's how you say to people, okay, we worked these measures with that kind of company and that NGO. It's about trust.
Yeah. And we'll just end with you, Pascal. Just, it's so important to have trust. It's so important to have transparency. But if we're realistic, I mean, I was reading that in the EU, the mandatory lobbying register, the transparency register, is still voluntary for many, many actors. There's lots of kind of big corporations contacting MPs off the record and via intermediaries. How do you think that we tackle that? Because that's the crux of the issue, isn't it?
So, in real life, it's okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. It's better now. So we have a transparency register. When we have now more than, if I'm not mistaken, more than 10,000 people registered. Give you a flavor of how many people work for these lobbying activities in Brussels. Why? Why the two main capitals globally of lobbying are Washington, D.C. and Brussels? Because the European law does not regulate things that are, I would say, for instance, do you have the right to have the veil in the university? Okay, very important debate for some, at least. But it's not a lobbying issue. I mean, there is no lobby to lobby for the veil or lobby to lobby against the veil. There are values, there are vision of our societies competing. There is no need to have lobbying activities. What we regulate at the European level, and that's why there are so many lobbyists, it's economic activities.
Yeah.
Finance, trade, packaging, food tech giants, agriculture, and so on. So every time where there is an economic interest at stake.
Yeah.
Energy, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
So that's
it's all about the money.
That's where it's about money, but it's about market access.
Yeah.
When we take a decision to say, well, we restrict the market access to one technology, one chemical pesticide, because we consider that it is too dangerous, then of course, if you are the producer of that chemical product, you are going to do anything you can to avoid that situation. So that's why there are so many lobbyists in Brussels, because we regulate economic activity.
Yeah.
Maybe just a word, which is to my view very important, is that if you step back, I'm a lawmaker. How come I could be smart without having any exchanges, any discussions with economic operators? Because if I want to regulate the energy sector, I need to have discussions with energy companies. I mean, otherwise I just invent something from my own office, which of course is rarely the right approach. So I need to discuss with them.
Yeah.
So that's why the core element of our democratic system implies that there is discussion.
It's a reciprocal relationship.
Exactly. So that's why the fact that lobbying does exist does not shock me.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if it does not exist, it means that I have no access to the corporate and that I don't know why I take X, Y, Z rule. So it's important that we are not caricatural here.
Yeah.
There are bad practices, and I started with the very bad practices. They are not all bad, and it's needed. So that's why what is important is to put some key principles and to make sure that they are already complied with. First principle is transparency, as you said. Second one is equality or equity in terms of treatment, so that we do not just listen to one side without listening to the other side. So if you have one company, you can listen to another one, or an NGO. If you have a meeting with the big one, it's good to have a meeting with the small one, and so on and so on and so on. So that at the end of the day, you have a diverse view of the stakes.
Yeah. Well,
and then you decide. You are more informed. You are smarter, and then you decide depending also on your political line.
Yeah.
But then it's, to my view, that's democracy, and that's a good, well-functioning democracy.
Yeah. Well, it's really, I think I'm relieved to know that you're an MEP, and you're really concerned about this transparency and trust, because it's quite a relief for us in Europe, even though I'm in the UK, Brexit. But it's a relief to know that you're in Parliament. It's a relief to know that you're standing up for good, positive lobbying and for Cleantech. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.